This is Spectator Spider-Man, issue 10, continuing on from where we left off with issue 9. Both covers for this story have been by Jorge Perez, co-creator of the Hispanic tiger character that has featured on them. If you missed part 1, we have a crisis on campus like Spider-Man often experiences. The university, Spider-Man University, is having budgetary issues and it is cutting back on the night school, which has left many of the students, the ones who have to work day jobs and whatnot to pay for college, rightfully angry. Seemingly on their side is Hispanic Tiger, a street-level hero and Marvel's most controversial creation, apparently. This issue follows a pretty standard routine. We have a big misunderstanding fight between Spider-Man and Hispanic Tiger. A good showing for Hispanic Tiger, actually. His prowess against Spider-Man is incredibly highlighted. I didn't mention it in part 1. I was expecting comments to point it out, but Hispanic Tiger, his Spanish is often incorrect. They are very imprecise translations. And I am going to defend that because at least the writer, Bill Bungalow, tried. This was before computers and being able to use Google Translate to get an inaccurate translation. Or the editor, or even the letterer, maybe, they put the legwork in. Someone in the production tried and failed to write Spanish. The thing is, they could easily have asked someone who spoke Spanish. Jorge Perez could have helped on that front, maybe. But I think we will agree, his two covers sell the comic better than Hispanic Tiger's dialect. I did promise you to cover the rest of Hispanic Tiger's history, and we begin with the good stuff. He is in more Spider-Man. Bill Bungalow keeps him as a supporting character. He is, well, his not-so-secret identity, Hector Ayala, attends college with Peter Parker. I am glad I saved this for part 2 because initially I was remembering him being overused in the title, and that isn't the case at all. Hector regularly appears, but Hispanic Tiger is usually reserved. Issue 20, that is the only other issue where I would argue Hispanic Tiger is massively featured. The reason I was misremembering his level of involvement is because Hispanic Tiger does appear a lot in the Curryman saga. That is him knocked out on the floor in the background. He is in that quite prominently, and that is the one story from this run that I have read a dozen times over. So I equated the usage of Hispanic Tiger in that to all the run. So Spider-Man is fighting Hispanic Tiger, and if I have not outright said so at this point, I really like Hispanic Tiger, and that will become more obvious when I have to, unfortunately, talk about how this character was handled after Bill Bungalow. We also have, at the bottom of this page, Professor Vasquez. I need to also acknowledge that despite my best hopes, Hector and his Latin American brethren are all just coloured white throughout this story, and even this series. I bigged it up like I thought the Masterworks would rectify it, and then they didn't. But the lack of diverse skin tone led me to realise for all these years I was misinterpreting part of this story. Oh, Defenders. Shit, I forgot that. Hispanic Tiger is in the Defenders for a Day story. Was meant to mention that before the next section I have entitled Shit Parade Part 1. The colouring though, you see, the Professor Vasquez, he is coloured the same pigmentation as Spider-Man. I am not bigoted enough that I would assume his nationality based on his surname, but until this read, I always thought he was a white guy, which completely changes his role in this story. We also have a very disconnected plotline with Detective Bird and the thieves from last issue. I reckon this whole story could have been streamlined into one really strong issue. Drop Detective Bird, these thieves, maybe the racist Dean. Keep the core team up and the misunderstanding fights. Those bits are good. Let's do Shit Parade Part 1. After Bill Bungalow left, the character was dropped. Even before he left, I think he wrote him out. Then, Royce Sternum brought him back for a story, but the story was only to get rid of him. I have my suspicions, but what isn't a suspicion is that it would have been another of Shooter's very prevalent mandates to kill off, retire, or do away with characters that were in limbo or that had been unsuccessful. This was a thing you might not have noticed, but he would often mandate writers get rid of these sorts of characters and remove them from the playing field. Black Star, Miss Marbles, Spider-Girl, even Ghost Driver eventually. The list is increasingly long. Those are the biggest examples that I immediately thought of. Black Giant Man, Satan's Son, much later on Iron Fist, and the Defenders. Almost Daredevil even. Hispanic Tiger's outro is harsh. Not only is he helplessly riddled with bullets by a lame villain, his entire family is executed off panel. There's not any victory for Hispanic Tiger, or even Spider-Man, in the story. The villain commits suicide by proxy. My belief, my theory, Shooter wanted rid of the character because it was a Bill Bungalow character. He didn't like the idea of Bill Bungalow holding the accolade of having introduced the first authentically Latino Marvel star. I should say survives. Hispanic Tiger survives. But then retires forever and literally leaves on a bus. That was Shit Parade Part 1, and it gets worse after that. Anyway, in this better comic, we learn that the Hispanic Tiger who was stealing from the library wasn't Hector Ayala, but instead Vasquez. And so one scene we saw last issue was not actual Hispanic Tiger, but that was what I wanted to gripe about. I don't buy that this random college lecturer would be able to actually come out on top in a battle with Peter Parker. Even if you want to pretend Peter Parker was half faking it to maintain his secret identity, I don't believe random college lecturer with no training can outspeed and outmaneuver even Peter Parker pretending to be a civilian. Mistaking the character for white also introduces new story elements and themes, such as cultural appropriation, and all the sort of things that fill modern comics. That is where we are going for part 2 of the parade. After 15 years of dormancy, Marvel introduced a new Hispanic tiger, who was not even Hispanic, but she was a tiger. A tiger evolved by the Digivolutionary, unrelated in every way to the original. She never appeared again after the series she was in ended. And then Michael Brian Benson brought Hector Ayala back in Daredevil and had him found guilty of murdering a policeman. And then to add insult to injury, Hispanic tiger takes people hostage and attacks people before committing suicide by cop. Unintentionally, similar to what happened to the bad guy from the Roy Sternum story. That's it though. That is the fate of Marvel's and Major Comics' first Latino star. Dead on a sidewalk, a wrongly convicted, pathetic failure. Disgusting. We have some maybe good team-up stuff here, with the two heroes having to put aside their differences to stop a crumbling wall from killing a bunch of darling little Enochs. We see how the Spanish community love their superhero, and that seeing Spider-Man working alongside him makes them like Spider-Man too. And we end with the two heroes basically friends now. And all the problems at college are just over now because the dean changed his mind about getting rid of the night school. Part 3. You didn't think it was over, did you? Benson introduced a new Hispanic tiger. A woman, naturally. A sarcastic woman. Nobody really cared about her. But she did eventually have her own miniseries because of the fact Benson created her. It was written by a woman who writes shitloads of fantasy fiction for teenagers, what is now called YA. I was originally going to say, look, another miniseries about a nothing character by some nobody who never wrote another comic. But she has written so many books I was overwhelmed when I looked at them. The other thing is, this rando author that I would have assumed doesn't really know comics or care, she fucking paid respect to Hector Ayala every issue. Every single issue features him on at least the first page, the recap page. I'll also give her some props for being one of the only writers to actually write about Iron Fist taking over Daredevil's identity when Matlock was in prison. That was a brief continuity thing. Very few comics acknowledged or dove into that as an idea. That Hispanic tiger character was abandoned though, in favour of a younger tween girl. And I was willing to overlook the Benson one because he at least gave her a different surname. But this one is an Ayala. She is Hector's never-before-seen or referenced younger sister, which outright contradicts the fucking idea that his entire family was slaughtered. I have never given this character a moment of a chance because her existence is not only a dumb retcon. The idea that a character whose family life we saw in depth in his original stories could also have a younger sister who we never saw or heard of, but then that it is also so blatantly flying in the face of the idea that his immediate family were murdered as retaliation. So over 2 issues I have given you the full breakdown on a character that Marvel should be celebrating, but instead destroyed and now almost deny was ever a thing or important. A character co-created by one of the biggest, most influential artists ever. A character that was a first in so many ways. A character that had decent, notable stories. Hispanic Tiger should be as relevant as Black Panther, and instead he bled out on some stairs. Imagine if any of that happened to Black Panther. Imagine if Black Panther was framed for murdering a white cop and then found guilty, and he took the court hostage and made the cops shoot him. People wouldn't shut up about how racist and disgraceful the treatment of the first black superhero was. Why do people not care about Hispanic Tiger? It annoys me. 7 thumb up.